This presentation isn't really aimed at people who are very familiar with Mojaloop. This is aimed really at adopters, potential adopters, and maybe even systems integrators. I just it just became aware of I just became aware of the last weeks and months that there are areas where people are not aware of all the functionalities that Mojaloop offers. So I just wanted to briefly cover that. So looking at the use cases first, James was very kindly a couple of times today pointed at the product level documentation. And this is something I've been working on over the last 6 months or so. We have a wealth of technical documentation and engineering documentation on the Mojaloop site, but there was very little which was accessible to adopters, really. So there is now a whole set of product documentation. It's not complete yet. It's still a work in progress. I'd say it's about 85–90% complete, but it just looks at Mojaloop as a product rather than as an engineering option. So that might be useful to some people. So I wanted to talk about our use cases. Generally, it's quite difficult to talk about the use cases Mojaloop supports because essentially you can do anything. Mojaloop is an engine for pushing payments from one account at one DFSP to another account at another DFSP, and you can build anything on top of that. So it doesn't really make any sense. So instead, we tried to look at this and group use cases by the protocol type. So I've already said we can do push payments, we can push value. There is also a request to pay. There's cash services, PISP, bulk payments, cross-border, and I'll go into a little more detail. But before I do that, I wanted to talk briefly about metadata because this came up with the go-to-market team a few times. So the very nature of Mojaloop as a switch interconnecting DFSPs means that Mojaloop cannot or should not ascribe meaning to a transaction. But transactions do have the potential to carry metadata along with the payment details. And it's that metadata that can be used by a scheme to link the payment to transactions outside Mojaloop, so giving meaning to the two participating DFSPs. And this can be used in certainly a push or a request to pay, but others could support it as well. And the metadata supports reconciliation. It contextualizes the payment and allows a DFSP to manage the payment beyond just the amount, the sender and the recipient. It's not strictly required for a transaction to move money, but it is crucial for reconciliation and also the customer experience as well. And a couple of examples are tagging with a bill or an invoice number is an obvious example. And where it's actually a person viewing it, descriptions like salary due in 2025, that kind of thing. Scheme defined, and this is a crucial point for me, scheme defined metadata enables automation of this. And it's typically handled by DFSPs via the core connector customization at each end of the transaction. So the very end of each side of the transaction is where the metadata matters. It's merely transported between. So talking about push payments, Mojaloop Hub directly supports these use cases. These are the ones we're all familiar with: P2P, P2B, B2B, B2G, P2G, and all variations on those. P2B, for example, can include merchant payments, and that can be face-to-face and what payments people call remote payments and other people call online or e-commerce. In all types of merchant payments, it can be facilitated using merchant IDs for USSD or QR codes if you have a smartphone. Request to pay. The payee requests a payment from a payer, and when the payer consents, they authorize that payment. The DFSP pushes the payment to the payee on their behalf. And this supports face-to-face merchant payments via QR codes or merchant IDs, which is what you use for USSD. And I'll come back to merchant payments a little more soon. E-commerce, pay from my bank account buttons in a web app, right, for example. And collections. P2G, etc. I won't go through all the various combinations of letters. Some collection use cases can also be implemented via 3PPI or PISP. I'll come back to that. And that's a recurring theme here. You can implement a use case in different ways, depending on which protocol you choose to adopt. So for collections, it could be RTP or it could be PISP. Cache services, a Mojaloop Hub directly supports the common interoperable cache in, cache out transactions that every DFSP and their customers would expect. That's cardless ATM withdrawals via ISO 8583, and I'll be coming back to that later. Agent-based Kiko, that's office locations, so independent branchless banking agents. Offline cache, we can treat an offline cache scheme as though it's digital cache, which it is. So wallet load is cache out, wallet upload is cache in. There's nothing magical about that. That's how I've implemented these schemes in the past. Offline wallet transactions, where they're retained by the offline wallet, can be routed through Mojaloop for reconciliation and interoperability. But that's a matter for the operator of the scheme. It's not a matter for Mojaloop. PISP, 3PPI, just to clarify the terminology. 3PPI is the protocol, so third-party payment initiation, and PISP is the organization that uses 3PPI. So it's the payment initiation service provider. Sorry, also known as fintechs. And Mojaloop supports the creation by fintechs and others to offer enhanced payment services through their own apps. Most DFSPs connected to a Mojaloop Hub can support 3PPI services if they have a reasonably modern back office. A fintech can use the 3PPI service to initiate a request to pay on behalf of users, and the supported use cases. These are just examples. Collections, as I've mentioned before, salary processing, so that could be bulk payments lists for an SME, or merchant payments even. You can do P2B via QR code. Every payment service needs to facilitate bulk payments, and Mojaloop offers this services using an extremely efficient model. All but the very smallest DFSPs are able to offer bulk payments to their customers, allowing them to submit payments lists that can reach every customer of every connected DFSP. And this is in support of pensions, social, and other payments. Sorry, just go back. And salaries, as I said before. So the bulk payment functionality is also available through or will be soon available through the 3PPI channel as well, so that all DFSPs, even the very smallest, can offer bulk payments through either a fintech or directly through their own service. Cross-border, a Mojaloop Hub can enable a DFSP's customers to send money across borders in a cost-effective manner, facilitating the FX process as part of the transaction. This supports obviously P2P and B2B, which you could call remittances and bill payments across country borders, and merchant payments, either request to pay or P2B, for small merchants trading cross borders in the local currency. Card payments, technically feasible, but of commercially sensitive area. It's not one I would actually advise anyone to do. It's perfectly possible to integrate a debit card system with Mojaloop and use it to push a payment, because clearly the card number, the PAN, can be used to initiate a request to pay from the issuer, because from the PAN you can extract the BIN, which identifies the issuer. So it's perfectly straightforward to do from a technical perspective. However, I would strongly advise anyone considering doing that with an international payment card, because Visa have bigger pockets than you when it comes to lawyers. But it is possible to integrate with a domestic debit card where the scheme owner, the domestic debit card scheme owner, wants to do it. That is one of those areas that's technically feasible but inadvisable. Now I want to talk about the overlay products, the bits that we tend to forget about, because this is what we tend to think of as the ecosystem. We've got Mojaloop Hub, we've got PISP interface, we've got the account lookup service, we've got DFSPs with their participants, etc., etc. This is the ecosystem as we all present it all the time. But the point is, it misses out a huge amount extra. We have a set of portals built to use the business operations framework, which allow a hub operator to interact with and manage the Mojaloop Hub. We have a merchant payments module, which supports merchant payment registration, merchant ID issuance, and QR code generation. We have a testing toolkit. We have an integration toolkit, which James Bush was just talking about. We have an ISO 8583 integration for ATM cash withdrawals. We have an integration with MOSIP for routing payments to MOSIP-based digital identities. And very soon, we're going to have a dispute management platform. So portals first, the BizOps framework. The Mojaloop BizOps framework provides resources for building and deploying business processes. It focuses on core business processes that are customizable and designed for open source collaboration. And the framework includes role-based access control, identity and access management, and a deployment plan for the UI portal, utilizing micro front ends and creating audit trails. So this is the architecture of the business operations framework. The only point I want to make out of this, as this apparent great complexity, is that every single service that's agreed that is within the Mojaloop Hub itself, down here, the Mojaloop core, has a set of APIs which are then expose micro front ends to which can then be used to create portals, which are then presented to the operator. So, and anyone can come along and put together some combination of the outputs of these APIs to create a portal to meet your needs. So don't focus on the complexity. The point here is the adaptability and flexibility for adopters. It can be installed as an overlay across a Mojaloop Hub. The finance portal is implemented using the business operations framework, and it provides access to the normal business as usual functionality of a hub operator: DFSP management, transaction troubleshooting, liquidity management, settlement management, etc., etc., etc. But what ships with the Mojaloop Hub is just the baseline. It's what you need to operate. But it is expected that adopters will extend to meet their particular needs using the BizOps framework and the APIs that it offers. Moving on, merchant payments is available as a flexible overlay for adopters to customize. As built at the moment, it follows a merchant acquirer model. The merchant's DFSP registers them to receive payments, and has all the facilities to do the normal KYB process. It requires minimal integration with the Mojaloop Hub. The only aspect is the merchant ID Oracle has to be integrated with the account lookup service. Other than that, there is no implication whatsoever for the Mojaloop Hub. And the solution supports USSD and QR code payment initiation. This is the overall architecture, which is not terribly enlightening, I'm sure you'll agree. But the point is, we have a misnamed acquirer database, which is actually the merchant registry, which is where we gather all the information about the merchant. And the registry database here is actually what's used for the Oracle to connect to the account lookup service. This is the only representative here of the Mojaloop Hub. The model that's actually in behind this assumes that it is actually the DFSPs that register merchants. It's not the scheme operator, the Mojaloop scheme operator. And but it is a shared database of merchants' registration details. And to illustrate just how complex the merchant registration process here is, here's the entity relationship diagram. Again, we won't go through it in detail, but I want you to understand that here we have the record for a merchant, and here we have merchant locations, and there can be multiple locations for that one merchant. Oops, sorry. And in each location, there are multiple checkout counters, and each of these, this is the foundational level where you get a QR code out of it, because a merchant is assumed to have multiple outlets and multiple tills within each outlet. So you need a QR code for each one separately. Then there's all the information about who owns the business and the contact persons, etc., etc. Over here on the other side is actually about the person that's doing the registering. So we need to also have traceability of which DFSP representative registered which merchant, so that we can, so if a fraud is detected, then we can ideally see who within the DFSP has registered those fraudulent merchants and why they did it. Okay, how do I customize this for my own payment scheme? Well, there is one package in this whole repository which creates the QR code. It links to the merchant registry. You've just seen the entity relationship diagram. It extracts data out of that, and it creates a QR code. The QR code that's generated is based on the EMVCo standard. I know that's a proprietary standard, and Miller, I know you don't like it, but the fact is that that's what everyone asks us for. And it's become almost a de facto standard in a large part of the world. It's easily customizable for different scheme needs. It supports multiple schemes in a single QR code. And we've been looking at it recently for one adopter where we're embedding 3 or 4 different payment schemes into the single QR code. I recommend an extension to what's in the repo at the moment. I think it needs scheme-based cryptographic signature adding. So sign the entire content of the QR code so that the customer app can validate that it's a valid QR code before making the payment. That does away with some of the most common frauds against QR code schemes. But again, not rocket science. Testing Toolkit. It's a powerful tool. It was developed by the Mojaloop community, and it is a great assistance for the integration between a DFSP and a Mojaloop hub. It was originally developed specifically aimed at DFSPs, but it's been extended further in recent years and now can take on either role. It can simulate a Mojaloop hub in order to attest to the DFSP's integration. So it makes it much easier to onboard a DFSP because they can test against the TTK to their heart's content until it all works. On the other side, it can simulate a DFSP, and that allows us to test updates to the Mojaloop hub. That's a simple architecture of the TTK. In fact, actually, this is the architecture when it was only used for onboarding DFSPs, but the diagrams haven't been updated, unfortunately. No, at least I couldn't find an updated one. Integration Toolkit, developed by the Participation Tools workstream. James was just talking about this earlier. It's a configurable tool to simplify DFSP integration. It eases the integration of a range of DFSPs, from the smallest MFI to the largest international bank. It handles all the complexity of setting up the security, including the management of the Mojaloop Connection Manager. And it makes life so much easier for adopters, DFSPs, and the SIs that want to onboard those DFSPs. A simple set here. Yev, who was talking earlier, did an awful lot of work on the Mojaloop Connection Manager here, and James has done a great deal of work on the state machine, and has been working on the configuration of the console utilities. You can configure it locally. And some version of this will work on every kind of DFS speech, from the smallest to the largest. The work of that work stream over the next few months is going to be effectively packaging up different ways of doing this, or providing the documentation to use this in different environments, be it a single board computer right the way through to a high throughput server in a bank's data center. ISO 8583, yes, Mojaloop supports ATM withdrawals. It can integrate with ISO 8583, in particular the 1993 edition of that standard. It enables cardless withdrawals using one-time pins. It's only works clearly with ATMs that can work without a card, but they're surprisingly common. I mean, I've been seeing them. I think I first saw the one in the wild, as it were, about 20 years ago. So they're pretty common. A typical flow: customer enters their account number and amount, and an OTP at the ATM. The ATM dispenses the cash, and the DFSP customer's account is debited plus any fee, and the ATM operator's account is credited. Fairly straightforward, as you'd expect. But that again is available as an overlay service. It's not in the Mojaloop core, but we've got it. Anyone can use it. MOSIP integration, routing a payment to a digital identity. We worked closely with the Mojaloop Foundation, worked closely with Infotech a couple of years ago on a demonstration, which allows you to route payments to a digital identity. So it's not the mobile number, it's not the IBAN or anything else, it's their digital identity. And we chose a particularly difficult one for this demonstration, MOSIP. It's open source, but it's privacy preserving, which means that no two organizations that person presents their digital identity to has the same identity number, which makes it difficult. We did find a solution, and we created a demonstration for social payments. This uses a beneficiary management system, which is linked into a Mojaloop hub with payments to a beneficiary's account, which was held in MiFOS, an open source a core banking system, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And we used a beneficiary registration portal, linking MOSIP IDs to, and apparently I forgot to finish the rest of that slide, so I apologize. But this is the ecosystem with Mojaloop on the right with the account lookup service. There's a beneficiary management system at the top. In the middle, we have here, this is MOSIP, which and the e-signet, which we use to verify the MOSIP identities, to generate the MOSIP token that we use. We have a beneficiary registration portal, which creates an entry in the Oracle for each of the beneficiaries. And we implemented this using MiFOS at the payee side with a payment adapter, which took the token and maps the payment token to to the Mojaloop Avis. Finally, dispute management. That's going to be coming soon, and in fact, the discussion is going to be coming very soon after the next break. And that is a very fast run through of all of the use cases and all of the overlay services. And I was aware that whilst I was talking that there were various comments being made in the chat, and I didn't have any time to write them. So back to you, Miller. Miller, why don't I take a question from you?
Just briefly, thank you, Paul. This is excellent to get this comprehensive view. I don't know, maybe I just missed it, but I don't think you mentioned request to pay, which is the traditional merchant controlled strategy for merchant payments, where they want to quote control the transaction, meaning they specify all of the terms of that transaction. The way I'd like to describe RTP would be that it is an unsolicited quotation that is sent by the recipient DFSP to the sending DFSP for their customer to approve or ignore. And we have support for that. I wonder if you could talk briefly about that. It's an important tool when we're going up against card systems. Thank you.
I agree. We do have that. It's in there as a standard, as one of the standard functions. We have merchant request to pay. We have two implementations of merchant payments. One of which is pushing from a QR code, and the other is request to pay. They both work perfectly well. It's a matter for a scheme to decide which they want to offer according to the demand from merchants in their ecosystem. So, yeah, but Miller, I would completely agree. It's very important.
Thanks very much.